Creativity is just your ability as a human to come up with ideas and then put them into action.
You have this ability to make phenomenal pictures and to show people how amazing they are as people. That is the gift, and it's pretty special.
For a lot of us, we just aim too low with those intentions. We say, I want to travel, or I want to make X amount of money. And those things are usually pretty attainable to some point. And once we get there, what happens next?
One of the most liberating things as an artist is to remind yourself that you don't have to please everybody. Once you give yourself permission to not have to please everybody, then you can start creating without fear.
The key is you have to find your own inspiration. You can't be inspired by my inspiration. You can't be inspired by anyone else's inspiration.
Your excitement is like a compass, and it points you in a certain direction. And when you walk or run in that direction, life seems to just align itself.
With basically anything, there's the art of it, and then there's the business side of it, the logistics of it, the structure of it.
Hello, creatives. Welcome back to the ARC Creative Podcast. This podcast is all about digging into the minds of creatives, understanding their stories, digging into their creativity, and learning what it is that motivates and inspires them to create so that we can take action to create ourselves. We hope to inspire you to become better artists and entrepreneurs by learning from the best in the arts and business. I am your host, Sachin Khona, and I thank you so much for joining us. My guest today is Angela Ruscheinski. She's a full-time wedding and lifestyle photographer and is based at home here in Vancouver, BC. After life as a server left her unfulfilled, she picked up a camera and has been crushing the industry for 5 years now. Always in constant competition with herself, she is making a huge mark in the BC photography scene. Focusing on a wide range of shoots including family, boudoir and weddings, Angela knew she would always work in the arts industry. She shares her philosophy today behind her education and inspiration in photography, how to say no to couples that don't suit your style, and how holding out for her ideal niche clients has helped her increase her happiness and portfolio. We can't wait to hear what Angela shares with us at the experience, and we're thrilled to have her today on the show. In this episode, we're going to discuss Angela's sink or swim mentality, saying no to the couples who don't suit your style, turning your weakness into a strength, the connection between yoga, visualization, and photography, and how to avoid burnout by setting goals. So it's pretty info-packed. Sit back, relax, grab a drink, and enjoy this conversation with Angela Ruscheinski. This episode is sponsored by The Experience. The Experience is a 3-day photography conference happening this October 2018 from the 23rd to the 25th in Vancouver, BC. 10 incredible creatives will join us from all over the world, and this week we'll announce 10 more speakers, each presenting for 15 minutes as part of our Big Ideas mini presentations. The experience is for all photographers and creatives from wedding, portrait, commercial, fashion, and fine art communities. The theme this year is the art and business of photography, and we at ARC want to continue to push the bar by inviting speakers such as today's guest, Angela Ruscheinski, to the event. And if you too want to raise the bar for yourself, learn from the best of the best, be a part of a growing, supportive community, and take part in our Adventure Day, we want to see you there. Listeners to the show can save $100 on the ticket price using the code PODCAST, that's podcast, at checkout. And if you're a student, get in touch for our discounted rate. Head to www.experience.thisisarc.co for more information. Welcome to the show, Angela.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
No worries. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Awesome.
A little strange talking about yourself, a little nervous, but excited.
Awesome. Yeah, no worries. I'm obviously new to podcasts, and it's something that I'm growing and learning from each day. So no worries. Just kind of embrace it and we'll go from there.
You bet.
Angela, your style and brand has really evolved over the years. I'd love for you to share a bit more about your journey as a photographer and what brings you to where you are now.
Okay, so I was trying to dig a little bit into, how my style evolved and where it came from. And I didn't actually figure it out myself. One of my girlfriends pointed it out to me. I did ballet my whole life. I went to a fine arts high school for dance. And I think that really evolved into shooting boudoir because it's very kind of similar in the way you think about every part of your body and details and the way limbs move and that. And then I think that boudoir shooting then has sort of translated into how I shoot couples. And I'm a very attention to detail focused person. I think that's maybe why I like doing those up close shots a lot. And I wonder if maybe that's kind of how the wave went from dance to boudoir to the way that I shoot couples today.
Awesome. And so you actually started in shooting boudoir first?
I didn't, but I did it right from the beginning. So I went into families and couples in boudoir all from the beginning, where I think a lot of people transition into boudoir as more of a thing later on, like that maybe their brides want to do. I just did it from the beginning.
Oh, sure. And so right now your work primarily consists of wedding, boudoir and families?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. I mentioned in the intro that you were a server before. What kind of led you to become a photographer? You know, I understand you were in ballet and that influenced your work for sure. But how did you end up picking up a camera and where did that journey start?
So I went to a fine arts high school, and I think it was obvious that I was going to do something artsy regardless, even though in high school I didn't know what that was going to be. Both my parents were self-employed, so I think that was an obvious direction to go. But I'm a very impulsive person. And at 23, I don't remember exactly what tipped it off, but I decided I wanted to be a wedding photographer, and that was it. And I made up my mind, and I hadn't even shot anything. I just knew that I liked art, and I wrote out a business plan that I'm sure was probably hilarious. And I gave it to my mom and I convinced her that she needed to buy me my first camera. And bless her heart, she did. And then I just started shooting and it went from there. And then the restaurant industry, I think that helped me a lot because having worked at a couple of different big chain restaurants and bartending and serving, I had a really big network of girlfriends. And then they all, were in relationships and then started to get married or have kids or want boudoir sessions. And I think that helped a lot too.
Oh, wow. And so being in that industry and building your network and getting work straight away, that's really impressive. What made you choose weddings? What in particular is it about weddings that drew you to it and made you draw up a business plan that inspired you to go in that route?
I always say if I hadn't done photography, I think I would have been a florist or a yoga teacher. I can't see myself doing anything other than something in that. I don't know if they're even in the same genre, but that artsy kind of vibe. And I think blogs and social media was like just starting to get big about when I was 23 there. And I was just following a lot of that because it was artistic, not necessarily because I shot or wanted to shoot yet. And I think something just sparked of like, I want to do that, or I think I could do that.
That's awesome. And what was your first experience like with the weddings that you shot?
I shot a lot of families first, and that really, really helped. I probably should have second shot, but I didn't. I did my first wedding, I think about a year after getting my first camera. And
awesome. Sink or swim.
Yeah, sink or swim. I can't say I'm too proud of that very first one, and I'll probably show some of my embarrassing work when I get on stage. But I'm pretty proud of my second one, so that's all right.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a bit about the couples that you attract and who you work with mostly?
Yeah, you bet. Even a couple of years ago, I used to think that success for me was shooting these big, lavish, blog-worthy ballroom weddings with a wedding cake that's taller than me. But I've learned that most of the time, those don't make me happy. Those couples there's usually a lot of stress, a lot of attention to the details that really don't matter to me. I just want really outgoing, fun, don't take life too serious people. I notice that a lot of my best friends in life are complete extroverts, which I'm not necessarily myself. I'm just drawn to people like that. And so I really like working with couples that are just loud and fun and not stuffy. And yeah, just I don't mind if it's a small intimate wedding or a really big party with a wild dance floor. I just want to leave at the end of the day being like, please be my friend. Please stay friends with me when I go home.
How do you feel that journey's been in terms of really narrowing down to get the sort of couples that you're now attracting?
Yeah, I think one of the most gratifying things about becoming more successful in your business is that you get the ability to say no and yes to the people that are right or wrong for you. And I'm not afraid now to guide someone else in a different direction if we're not going to jive the way I want. They're going to get a better experience if I point them to somebody else anyway. So it's good for both of us.
Do you feel that over the last few years, you've really been able to hone in on exactly the sort of couples and clients that you'd like?
I do. I definitely do. A couple of years ago, I just got one of those eye-opening weddings that was perfect for me. And I think that was kind of the tipping point of being like, hey, I can do more of this. I'm going to hold out for the ones that are like this.
Awesome. And do you have any advice for photographers who are maybe starting out or really trying to figure out their style and find out who they are and the sort of couples that they want to attract? What advice do you have for someone newer into the wedding photography world?
For sure. I know that I totally get that you got to pay your bills first and foremost, especially if you're doing it full time. So I don't want to discredit anybody who's just out there to book what they can. But I think when you go home at the end of the day from a wedding, you know if they were the right couple or the wrong couple. I go home, smiling ear to ear, and I wanted to hug everyone before I left. Or I go home feeling like I'm exhausted and that was a day at work. And that to me, I'm just listening to, okay, so who were those kinds of people and how do I keep finding more people like that?
Awesome. So in the journey over the last 5-6 years, how have you kept yourself educated and inspired in terms of photography?
Yeah, I think I've learned to really listen to when something makes me uncomfortable. It's important to lean into that instead of, back away from it, to shy away from things that are making you nervous. If that was, a technical shooting skill or a certain type of lighting or time of day, if that made me nervous, it's easy to just bury your head in the sand, but I would instead just focus so much energy on that until it didn't scare me anymore. That helped me a lot. And I think as far as education, for me, there's always more we can learn about technical shooting, but it's really important to stay inspired. And I think if I stay inspired, then I'm going to keep evolving. When I burn out, that's when I feel like things can go flat.
Awesome. And so could you give us an example of some areas that you've really leaned into in the past that you've now turned a weakness into a strength?
Yeah, it can be little things. Like I set a goal a couple of years ago. I thought my bridal party shots were really boring and generic, and I made it like a challenge at every wedding. I was going to do a better job with those. And that was actually one of the first ever little award I won for anything, was a couple of my bridal party shots. So that was really rewarding. And then, low lights scared me for a while, and flash scared me for a while. And then I would just pour everything into those until it was no thing.
Awesome. And is there any areas that you're currently leaning into to overcome?
I'm really inspired by people that can shoot in a super photojournalistic style, because that's not me. That's not my strength. I feel at my strongest when I'm doing portraits or giving direction. But a wedding is still, a day that tells a lot of stories, and I'm trying to be better at catching the little moments that aren't coming from direction. Just try to connect the pieces a little bit better and bring a little bit of that photojournalistic style into my work, because that's not naturally the way I shoot.
Beautiful. And any photographers that are currently catching your eye in terms of photojournalistic style?
Oh, Justine is just the best for sure. I think she's amazing. Nikki Boone, which she's coming this year, what she does with family is so good. And I was so inspired last year by Fair and the way that he just took these risks that blew my mind. Like he shot this one bride walking down the aisle from the other direction, and she was just strutting, and he decided to shoot it the other way. And I just thought that was so bold. So that inspires me too.
That's beautiful. And so you mentioned, some of the speakers in the past at the experience. You're now one of our keynote speakers next year in October. I'd love to hear a bit about what we can expect from yourself at ARC and a bit about what your presentation is about.
Yeah, I've been trying to do visualizations of myself on that stage, and having been there for the past 2 years as an attendee, it's so crazy. I'm trying to flip myself out of that role, and it's really surreal. I'm going to be talking a lot about, just kind of how I've come through photography and what my day-to-day life is, and burnout, because I experience a lot of that, and how I've kind of found balance. And I'm going to talk a lot about how I work with couples, because I feel like that's one of my strengths.
Awesome. And so there's a few areas within that it's okay for us to touch upon. You mentioned preparing for the experience and doing visualization practices. For those who aren't used to or familiar with visualization, can you tell us a little bit about your practice and how you've incorporated this into your life?
I think you're the master at this, not me. I'm a total yogi, and a big compliment that I've received from couples quite a bit is that they feel like I bring sort of a calm energy to their shoots. And so I've tried to really listen to that and play off of that, because I think you need to play off of your strengths. So when I drive to a session, I'm always listening to my yoga chill music and putting myself in the right frame of mind, trying to get rid of whatever other things might be going on in my head. When I go to yoga, they always say, when you walk through the door, leave whatever your to-do list, your stress, leave that outside. And I try and do the same thing with sessions. And I'm going to try and do the same thing on the stage. But yeah, I've been just trying to do the visualization so that I can get myself up there in advance and hopefully not be as nervous as, I think I might be. But
and that's totally fine. Yeah. I definitely practice visualizations myself. And, before, just one example of something that I did was go to the venue, go to the stage and literally stand there, pretend that I could visualize or pretend that I could see the whole audience there and just things going well. And that made me feel so much more calm as opposed to experiencing it on the day or hoping that I experienced it on the day. And so I guess I would see it in my mind beforehand, but then when I was actually close to the venue, I would just call the manager up and say, hey, can I just come in for a bit? I want to look around. And getting on stage was really impactful for me. And when I'm at the Douglas, if you ever want to come and just check out the space,
absolutely,
you're more than welcome
I think
to.
that would be so helpful. And I think it's going to help too that Vancouver is where I'm from and there'll be a lot of familiar faces, but that's definitely great advice.
No worries. And, definitely even for photographers and those who are doing portrait shoots or commercial work or even weddings, and I really love going to a venue or going to a spot and just like feeling out the energy of the place and just getting some ideas and getting some more comfort built around those spaces. It's a really powerful practice to do, one, just at home and to visualize you being there, but then also practically, physically just going down there and doing it too.
Completely agree. Yeah.
You mentioned a few times burnout and balance. And this is something I believe a lot of photographers, especially in the wedding industry, face, particularly around the end of a season. The experience is in October, and it was very intentional for it to be around that time when people are feeling overwhelmed and a bit stressed, but to really bring the community together to kind of celebrate the awesome lives that we have as photographers and entrepreneurs, but really to just give us a boost of energy as well, an inspiration to carry us through into the next season. I'd love to hear about some of the experiences that you may have felt with burnout and how you've overcome them.
I think what you've done with ARC being in October is so perfect. I know we all really, really look forward to it. The timing of it is exactly what I know I need. I was so burnt out at the end of last season that I did a first look backwards, and I didn't even realize it until I was culling the images. I put the groom in the spot and had the bride walk down the riverbed towards him. And what was lucky for me was they ended up thinking it was really neat and artsy and different, but it was just, I was brain fried. So I just need to constantly remind myself, what are those times a year that I get most stressed out at? And I know it's usually end of wedding season and then again at Christmas and different times. And I'm trying to in advance block off, I'm going to take these 4 days, no shoots, or I'm going to allow myself only X amount of hours per day. And I just have to set limit and rules to myself. Otherwise, it just affects me too much. And it's not fair to my couples because, I'm glad that they loved their backwards first look, but it could have been something different.
For sure. And so, by the time this goes live, it will be July. For someone who's in the middle of their season or even at the start, what is a good way to look at your calendar and just kind of block out days and set limits? Is there something that you've done in the past where it's really hard, I feel, for creatives to, well, definitely for me to just go in there and really prioritize days where I'm not going to do any work and I'm going to just have those days for me because opportunities arise and they can be really enticing. So how have you done this in the past?
For sure. I think the direction that my speech is going is almost going to be like sitting up there working through it myself because I don't feel like I'm in a position to stand up there and say, hey, this is how you find balance, because I'm still trying to figure that out myself. I just know that it's something that's a really common theme in my life.
Awesome. And so are there any routines that you have in the morning or in the evening that really help you set yourself up for the days and weeks ahead that ensure that you're taking care of yourself?
I know that I really do like routine. It's just the way that I'm programmed. I bizarrely really enjoy Mondays because I feel like Saturday and Sunday are these family days and we're always doing different stuff, which is amazing. And I need that. And then I come to Monday and it's like, oh yeah, okay. I get up at this time. I do my breakfast. I take my kid to daycare. I do my emails. I like that structure. So that helps me, I think. But yeah, I keep a similar timeline, similar schedule each day. My husband and I try and take a lunch break together as often as we can. He's a realtor, so we're on sort of similar, kind of make your own hours-ish. And we block off set vacations every once in a while, but they're few and far between. But again, it's something that we're working on and we're working through. And he's really good at reminding me, like, hey, remember, don't get too stressed out. Remember where you were last December.
Yeah, for sure. And do you have, as part of your routine, how do you kind of end your days? Is there something that you do as a practice to set yourself up for the following day?
Again, I would like to say that I am going to speak as this expert on balance, but it's really going to be me up there working through a lot of my own issues and hopefully people finding similarities in that. I am definitely guilty of, going to a shoot, coming home, backing up those images. And next thing I know, it's 1 a.m. and I'm still working and my husband's gone to bed. And then, we're just trying to set aside days where we don't slip into that. But I do yoga a good 3 or 4 times a week. And for me, that's my reset. Every time I go to a class, I'm like, yes, I feel better. I feel so good. And I usually won't end up working that night because it's my reminder of like, hey, keep your head in this space. You're going to feel more cleansed for tomorrow.
That's awesome advice and a beautiful practice to have as well. I'd love to talk a bit more about the boudoir work that you do and the family sessions that you do. With these different types of genres that you're working in, how do they kind of interplay with each other and how do you What have you learned from shooting all these different types of genres?
Boudoir has stayed kind of this separate niche, and I admittedly have been doing a lot less of it. I really, really enjoy it, but it's very detailed. There's a lot that goes into organizing a session too, hotel and makeup and all sorts of things. And being as busy as I am, I find I'm doing a lot less. But when I do it, I really, really enjoy it. My family and my wedding work, I feel like there's a lot of crossover. And what I've really learned from family sessions is the difference in working with the men, I think, with family is huge to weddings. When you've got just a couple at the wedding, the guy's in the right mentality, he's had a glass of champagne, they're super in love, like they know what to expect. I think it's easier to work with those guys. Whereas with a family session, they want to make their wife happy and they want those pictures. They love their kids, but a lot of the time they're a little bit more apprehensive. And I look at it as almost like this challenge to like crack them and get them to open up. And I love that part of shooting family. It's the biggest reward to me when they say to me at the end or partway through, like, hey, I was really nervous, but you made that really easy. And I feel like I don't shut up during the entire family session. I just talk the entire time. And I know that doesn't work for everyone. And I tell my clients that that's my process. And the people that book me, I think, appreciate that. And that direction obviously helps me with weddings too. It's just, that's the way I shoot, where there's a lot of people who have this hands-off approach and they're amazing at that too. I think you just have to find the couples that mesh with the way that you shoot.
Definitely. And so that sounds definitely like one of your core strengths as a photographer. Could you tell us a bit more about what you feel your other strengths are within the work that you do?
Yeah, I think that's my main one. This ability to, I like saying like, I don't want to crack them. I want to crack the couple, get them to warm up. I like to be really aware of the energy that I'm bringing to a session. And I want it to be comfortable and calm. I give a ton of direction, but there's a very fine line between giving direction and saying something that might make somebody feel uncomfortable or feel like they're doing something wrong. So I've put a lot of energy in how to do that right. And, I'm not the most technically perfect photographer, and I don't create these like incredibly interesting compositions, but I think my niche is in connection between the couples and just pulling out those intimate, playful, connected images.
Beautiful. And so what advice would you have around building a better connection with couples and really leading into that? Because some photographers may not be that comfortable in getting that close to a couple, but it may be something that they're looking to work on. So how have you kind of built that level of comfort?
Yeah, I think I touched on this in the last question. There's different styles of shooting for everybody. And this is what I do isn't going to work for everyone, because if it's not your personality, then it would feel forced. But I don't stop talking the entire session. If there's silence, then I'm asking them about their family or their kids or their wedding plans. And if I am silent, I always say, hey guys, if I'm not talking, just assume you're doing the right thing. And I think I'm trying to give them permission to just take a breath and relax into what they're doing. And I would say that the majority of people that come to a session are nervous. We're not shooting models. And I think that really helps to just keep that conversation going. I make fun of myself a lot. I just try and take the attention off of what they're actually doing and then guide them through, candid walking, cuddling, that kind of stuff.
Beautiful. And so with that in mind, isn't really attracting the sort of couples that, families or the boudoir clients that they want, or they'd like to push themselves in another direction. How's the best way to kind of start hitting those other markets and really expanding their reach?
Yeah, I think it's really important to advertise is the wrong word, but to put out to your couples what your philosophy on shooting is and how you shoot before you actually get to that session, so that you give them the opportunity to realize that they might not be the right fit if they're looking for something different. So I give a lot of information in advance to booking a session. My initial emails go over the way I shoot. My website has a long extended philosophy on who I want to work with. I think the more of that stuff you can put out there, the more likely you're going to be to attract the right people.
Awesome. Could you tell us, I'm really curious as to with boudoir photography in particular, you mentioned that you kind of just started that off straight away as you were shooting weddings and even families. If you wanted to make a start into that and you haven't done it before, what's a good way to get started, even if you don't have anything that you can show to a potential client of the sort of work that you want to put out there?
If you're shooting weddings, a lot of my brides are my main clients. Ask them if it's something they're interested in. A lot of the time I'm shooting in these hotels with hair and makeup and all that, those extras, but it's more about making that bride feel special, making it feel about like an experience as they're making it as a gift. But you don't need all of that stuff. You can shoot it just in front of a beautiful window and do it soft and simple. And I would just suggest, ask some of your existing clients that you shot other things for if it's something they might be interested in.
Awesome. And any goals that you've set around what you want to achieve within Boudoir families or weddings at the moment?
Oh, honestly, I want to book a little bit less next year, and just every year it's the same goal of more of that niche client of who is my perfect client and how do I book those. It's really easy when you get a great inquiry, a year and a half, 2 years in advance to take it and pay your bills. But I find that our calendars, they will fill up if we're patient and we hold out for the really good ones. So that's the constant reminder that I'm trying to hold out for the stuff that really resonates with what makes me happy.
Awesome. So, I said in the intro that you've been shooting for 5 years, but I believe that's actually 5 years full time and you've been shooting for 8 years.
Right.
One of the things that I know you love doing is setting goals. And I'd love to hear more about this sort of process. How do you go about setting the goals that you do, and how do you constantly stay in competition with yourself?
It's funny. It's actually one of the things that I think made my husband and I just fall for each other, is we're both very similar that way. And early in our relationship, to do these goal setting nights, and we still do. And he's in business with his twin brother, and the two of them do it as well. So it's just a very present thing in our households. He's very close with his twin as well. So we're always pushing each other. And I keep a clipboard right beside my desk of my current goals. And there's always some short-term ones and some long-term ones, and then a couple fun ones that don't relate to photography, which are usually to do with some new handstand or headstand or crazy yoga thing that I want to try.
Awesome.
But believe it or not, getting into speaking was a huge one. And I'm sure, Sachin, you remember that I had tears going down my face when you asked me to speak, because that was a big one. And I didn't know, if it would happen or how many years it might take me to get to that point, but it did. And, and that's so amazing for me.
Awesome.
So.
I'm glad Art and I could be a part of bringing that goal into reality.
Thank you.
So I'd love to hear maybe a couple of goals that you set in terms of business, life, and some of the fun ones like headstands and what are some of your current goals that you're looking to achieve?
My non-wedding related one right now is to get my yoga teacher training, which is crazy because I don't know where I'll find 200 hours.
Wow.
A lot of these goals don't have time limits on them. So when I write it down, then it's just something that I know stays in the back of my head. A photography related specific one right now is I would love to learn how to shoot Milky Way photos. I'm just fascinated by the stars in the universe, but I can't take a landscape photo if my life depended on it. So that's where I'm sitting with that right now. And then a lot of little ones are locations I want to shoot or types of weddings that I want to do. I'm such a hippie at heart. I want to go shoot at Burning Man. I think that would just be amazing.
Oh, me too.
So it's things like that.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. I definitely align with the shooting Burning Man, and a big goal of mine or dream of mine is to do portraits. Yeah, 100%. Right. I've seen just so many incredible characters and people there, and to take portraits and to just experience it as well would be incredible. So we'll have to talk more about that for sure.
You bet.
With these goals that you have, and you mentioned with your husband that, you're setting these goals and him with his twin, how do you balance the goals that you have and wanting to do 200 hours of yoga teacher training, which is incredible, and I really admire that. How do you balance that with family life and with having a son as well?
Yeah, like I said, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get on stage and maybe even crack a little bit emotionally, because I'm certainly not someone who's doing this perfectly. It's just something that I'm trying to do. And I laid in bed with a lot of guilt about, my son being in full-time daycare, but then I have guilt if I'm not hitting my work goals either. So it's balanced in that way. Where's that fine line of what's going to make me happy? But it's important to both of us that we're going to raise our son to watch ambitious parents. I think my parents were both self-employed and driven, and I think there's a lot of value in showing that to your kids.
Definitely. And growing up, your parents, what did you learn from them as a child, and a creative one at that?
Yeah. Jamie's dad is amazing and has all these incredible traits, but he was a postman and a play it safe kind of generation guy. And Jamie worked a government job for a very long time. And when he wanted to take the leap to go to real estate, his dad was really nervous for him. And now he's just his biggest fan and brags about his sons all the time. But I'm lucky that my parents were already kind of programmed that way. And I don't think they were one bit surprised when I said, hey, I'm going to be a photographer. And I hadn't even shot yet. And they're like, yeah, all right, how do we help set you up here? Because they both were running their own businesses, and that lifestyle made them happy. And I think they were really glad to see me go in that direction.
Awesome, Angela. I want to go back to the experience. And, you've been to the last two, which started in 2016, 2017. You helped us organize a stylized shoot with the attendees on our adventure day. The way the experience works is that we have, for the audience listening, we have 3 days of presentations, but within that we have other events that are in the evenings. But on day 2, we kind of end halfway, and then we have various activities that the audience can do together. And it could be curling or going to a brewery or biking around Stanley Park, checking out the murals or going to the art gallery. But one of the things that we wanted to do was also incorporate some stylized shoots, and Angela kindly volunteered to be one of the photographers taking a bunch of people out. We kind of set the limit to say 15 for that one in particular, but I think over 40 people attended, which is incredible. And yeah, I'd love to hear more about that experience, and then from there leading on to a bit about your masterclass.
Yeah, honestly, part of the reason that I volunteered to do that and asked you if I could do something at art goes back to my goal setting. And I'm a total adrenaline junkie. Anything that just makes me uncomfortable or gets my heart rate pounding, I might hate it in the moment, but I just like crave it. And doing something like that was just brand new to me, and I wanted to give it a shot. And I'm so glad I did. I didn't expect that many people to come to, and I'm sure the rain was a big factor, but it was so much fun.
And then leading into your masterclass this year in 2018, could you tell us a bit about what some of our audience can expect?
Yeah, I'm going to go a lot more into detail about how I work with couples. I'm going to touch on it a bit at the keynote, but I want to give a lot of like slides of examples, some real life posing. I can't act, but I'm going to try and act out how I would walk through the beginning of a session, just all the things that I do in a shoot to really get people to open up. I'm going to talk about different parts of my business as well. Basically a super elaborated version of what my keynote will be.
Beautiful. That sounds awesome. And what kind of photographer is this directed to, or what kind of experience level?
Yeah, I think any level is going to be great. Anyone who's shooting similar stuff to what I'm doing. So weddings, boudoir, family photographers for sure, portrait photographers for sure. And anyone who wants to learn more about working with your clients and their feelings and their moods and how to warm them up. I think that can apply to a lot of things.
Beautiful, Angela. And anything in particular this year at the experience that you're looking forward to as a past attendee for a couple of years and now obviously being the keynote? Besides the presentation, is there anything that you're excited to experience again?
I think just every year has been better, and this one will be even more so because, you know, you get out of your shell and you learn more people each year you go. And being on stage, I think, will really crack me out of my comfort zone. And I just made so many friends through it, and it's just snowballed each year. So I'm hoping this will be the same.
Beautiful, Angela. I really appreciate your time and for, just going into a bit more about your background, about how you're finding balance and working through that, the challenges that you're facing. Hearing about your goal setting really inspired me to create some more, kind of outrageous goals. Definitely a handstand is something that I'm going to
I'll teach
add
you.
into that. Oh, please do.
Stand on your head.
Could you give me a bit of quick insights into that now? Or does it have to be an in-person thing?
I'll give you a live demonstration.
Okay, perfect. I would absolutely love that. So thank you so much. And and also leaning in, one of the big takeaways for me was, just leaning into those areas which we struggle with. So, for photographers, it may be to do with, flash weddings, or it may be with trying to find the right sort of couple for you, and just recognizing that, leaning into it, and really, really pushing yourself to overcome those things. And as you mentioned, with group photos, even winning awards from it and really being recognized because you push yourself that much. And that to me is super inspiring. So thank you, Angela, for your time and for the awesome encouragement. And we're excited to see you in October.
I can't wait. Thank you.
Well, guys, how was that? Are you saying no to the couples who don't suit your style? What are some of the weaknesses that you can turn into strengths? To learn more about Angela, she can be found at www.photosbyblush.com and on all other platforms as @photosbyblush. Get in touch with Angela and tell her what you thought, and tell us too. As a wedding photographer, one of my key takeaways was definitely looking more into the weaknesses that I can turn into strengths in all areas, in my day-to-day life, in photography, and in business. It's something I'll definitely be making the time to do for sure. But how about you? What will you be actioning from today and from this episode? Join the conversation, use the hashtag #TheArcCreativePodcast and tweet us @ArcThisIs. We'd absolutely love to hear from you. Finally, thank you so much for your time, and to stay connected with us here at Arc, check us out on iTunes and subscribe for more shows coming up with Hugh Whitaker, The Great North Collective, Brian Morrow, Nikki Boone, Shuam Geddes, and so many more. If you're in the creative community or know someone who'd enjoy the show, we'd love it if you could share a link with them. Thank you to all of those who continues to leave us reviews after a show released just a month ago, and continue to rate and leave a written review on iTunes. It really helps us and gives us feedback too. Once again, I'm your host, Sachin Khona, and with maximum love and gratitude to you and your creative journey, we'll catch you next week for another episode of the Art Creative Podcast with my guest, Hugh Whitaker. Peace.